way, toward the direction Wiggin had called north instead of the direction he had identified as up. This time, Bean happened to arrive near a handhold, and he caught it with surprising ease. He had done it before in his launch group's battle room practices, but he was small enough that, unlike the others, it was quite possible for him to land in a place that had no handhold within reach. Short arms were a definite drawback in the battle room. On short bounds, he could aim at a handhold and get there with some accuracy. On a cross-room jump, there was little hope of that. So it felt good that this time, at least, he didn't look like an oaf. In fact, having launched first, he arrived first. Bean turned around and watched as the ones who had blown it made the long, embarrassing second leap to join the rest of the army. He was a little surprised at who some of the bozos were. Inattention can make clowns of us all, he thought. Wiggin was watching him again, and this time it was no passing glance. "You," Wiggin pointed at him. "Which way is down?" "Didn't we just cover this?" "Toward the enemy door." "Name, kid?" Come on. Wiggin really didn't know who the short kid with the highest scores in the whole damn school was? Well, if we're playing mean sergeant and hapless recruit, I better follow the script. "This soldier's name is Bean, sir." "Get that for size or for brains?" Some of the other soldiers laughed, but not many of them. They knew Bean's reputation. To them, it was no longer funny that he was so small. It was just embarrassing that a kid that small could make perfect scores on tests that had questions they didn't even understand. "Well, Bean, you're right on to things." Wiggin now included the whole group as he launched into a lecture on how coming through the door feet first made you a much smaller target for the enemy to shoot at. Harder for him to hit you and freeze you. "Now, what happens when you're frozen?" "Can't move," somebody said. "That's what frozen means," said Wiggin. "But what happens to you?" Wiggin wasn't phrasing his question very clearly, in Bean's opinion, and there was no use in prolonging the agony while the others figured it out. So Bean spoke up. "You keep going in the direction you started in, at the speed you were going when you were flashed." "That's true," said Wiggin. "You 5, there on the end, move!" He pointed at 5 soldiers, who spent long enough looking at each other to make sure which 5 he meant that Wiggin had time to flash them all, freezing them in place. During practice, it took a few minutes for a freeze to wear off, unless the commander used his hook to unfreeze them earlier. "The next 5, move!" 7 kids moved at once. No time to count. Wiggin flashed them as quickly as he flashed the others, but because they had already launched, they kept moving at a good clip toward the walls they had headed for. The first 5 were hovering in the air near where they had been frozen. Look at these so-called soldiers. Their commander ordered them to move, and now look at them. Not only are they frozen, they're frozen right here, where they can get in the way. While the others, because they moved when they were ordered, are frozen down there, plugging up the enemy's lanes, blocking the enemy's vision. I imagine that about 5 of you have understood the point of this. We all understand it, Wiggin. It's not like they bring stupid people up here to battle school. It's not like I didn't pick you the best available army. And no doubt Bean is one of them. Right, Bean? Bean could hardly believe that Wiggin was singling him out again. Just because I'm little, he's using me to embarrass the others. The little guy knows the answers, so why don't you big boys? But then Wiggin doesn't realize yet. He thinks he has an army of incompetent launchies and rejects. He hasn't had a chance to see that he actually has a select group. So he thinks of me as the most ludicrous of a sad lot. He's found out